Hi everyone. So today I want to do a very quick tutorial on the thinking square for this week. We've asked you guys to do a book connection chain, and there's a link to this worksheet that I have on the screen here. I've done mine on the computer because I want to do this tutorial and I'd like to walk you through it. But you can print this off and you can fill it in that way as well. That's probably the best way for you guys to do it, is to print it and fill it in. You can also draw your own connection chain on your own piece of paper and take a picture of it and send it to me. So either way is fine. If you are able to print, I think that's probably the easiest. Print it off, fill it in, take a picture, send it to me. If you don't have access to a printer, you can just recreate your own chain here. Um, so what I want you guys to do is, it says here in the directions to connect the next 6 books you read. Well, since we're at the end of the year, I want you guys to connect the last 6 books that you've read, okay? And that's what I've done in my chain, is I've went back through the last 6 books that I read and I've put them into this chain. And then you can record any connections that you make between the books. And so I'm going to walk you guys through my chain and tell you about some of the connections that I made and give you some ideas for how to make connections when it seems like you have books that are completely not like each other. Or if you have a tendency to, or if you've read like your last 6 books or 6 books in a series, then how do you find different connections that you can make, right? That aren't all the same connection. Um, so let's walk through this. I'm going to go through my chain in like a clock. Okay, so we're going to go clockwise through my circle. And the very first book that I have here is a book called All the Bad Apples. It is a really good young adult read. It's on several YA like must read lists if you are into Goodreads. Um, and so I read that one recently. And the next book that I have here in my circle, it's not a YA book. It's called In a Dark, Dark Wood. And the connection that I made between these 2 books is the characters, and both books have female main characters. So, what you do is you write your connection, the topic of your connection, and then you explain in greater detail. So, my connection is these characters, and both of them are female leads in the book. So, moving down my circle, I have next is In a Dark, Dark Wood. And then the other book that I have is An Unwanted Guest. So, both of these books are connected by their genre. They are both murder mystery books. If you know a thing or two about me, you know that I love mystery, I love thrillers, I love true crime, I love that kind of stuff. I also love to read nonfiction too. All right, so moving around our circle here, you can see that the writing starts to go upside down, but I've kept all of my text right side up so that you guys can read along here. But next in our circle, we have An Unwanted Guest and the connection with All the Light We Cannot See. Now, this was the beginning of like, oh man, these books are completely different. An Unwanted Guest is a modern day murder mystery, whodunit kind of book. And All the Light We Cannot See is an historical fiction that takes place during World War II in Paris. And Unwanted Guest takes place in America. So it's like, how can I make these 2 books connect? And so when they don't have a lot of like subject matter connected, like the characters, you can't connect characters, you can't connect setting, look to the way that the writing is structured, and maybe you can find a connection there. And so for mine, I was able, both books tell their story from more than one perspective. So in An Unwanted Guest, we have 6 people, I think, who are all staying in a remote hotel for the weekend, and each chapter focuses on one of the hotel guests' story. And then All the Light We Cannot See switches back and forth between two main characters, and each chapter tells the story from the other character's perspective. So even though they had very little in common, I was able to make that connection between those two books. And then we have here All the Light We Cannot See, which again is a historical fiction, takes place during World War II. And then the brand new Hunger Games prequel. If you have not had a chance to get a copy of it yet, I suggest that you do if you love the Hunger Games. I read all of the Hunger Games as soon as they came out. And as soon as this book came out, I snatched it up and read it. So the new Hunger Games prequel is called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And again, as you guys know, Hunger Games, it's dystopian, it's set in the future. And then All the Light We Cannot See is a historical fiction, World War II. So it's like, how are these books going to connect? But I was able to think of a connection, and they both connect through their subject matter because both of these books deal with the outcome of war. So the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it's written from President Snow's perspective, and he is a teenager, um, and he has just he's lived through this horrific war, and the capital is kind of rebuilding itself after this war, and they are the new power. But he is very much traumatized by the things that he witnessed and the things that he experienced during that war. And then, of course, All the Light We Cannot See, a lot of it has to do with like the bombing, the Germans bombing Paris. And so the characters are, experiencing their city being bombed. And so that was the connection that I was able to make there. And then moving up back around the other side of our circle, so we have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, dystopian futuristic novel, and then A Heart and a Body in the World. And this book is a realistic fiction, and it is written. It's a young adult book too, and I highly suggest it to anybody who's interested in young adult fiction. But it's about a girl who is a runner, and but in both of these books, they're dealing with very different things, but they both have a budding romance as a subplot. So it's not the main plot, but there's like an underlying storyline. So in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Coriolanus Snow is he begins to fall in love with Lucy Gray, who is one of the tributes from District 12, and he is her mentor in the 10th annual Hunger Games. And then here in A Heart and a Body in the World, the main character goes on, she decides that she is going to run across the United States. She's going to run from coast to coast. She's starting in Seattle, Washington, and she's going to end in Washington, D.C. And along the way, she begins to develop feelings for another character in the book. Um, so that is my connection between those two. And now we are back up to my very first book, All the Bad Apples and A Heart and a Body in the World. And the connection that I made between these two was theme. Both of the main characters embark on what English teachers call a hero's journey. And in ninth grade, you'll focus a lot on the hero's journey. But it's essentially a heroic character that goes on an epic adventure. So in A Heart, in the Body, in the World, we, like I said, she's running from Seattle to DC. And so that is certainly an epic journey. And then in All the Bad Apples, that takes place in Ireland. And the main character there has a mystery that she is trying to solve. and she needs to go on an adventure in order to solve that. And so both of those characters embark on their journey. So that is how I did my book connection chain, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I hope that you guys do too. So until next time, everybody, take care, stay safe. Should I look at